we are at step 5, in which we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Bill is, in his remarks on this step, said nothing works like step 5 than this deflation of the ego. And this is what this program is all about, to remove self. And we get to 5, we do a little review each week, and we said the first step is the foundation of recovery. And basically, we know that in all problem solving as we go through this, is that it's a simple process. It's just a matter of finding out what is the problem, is the first step in recovery from a problem. And if we don't find that, just basically like we do, we go to the doctor, and the doctor makes a diagnosis to find out what is the problem. And if he can't find the problem, then you can't determine the solution. In fact, the solution is based on this information. So this is the foundation of everything we're going to do. What is the problem? And for many, many years, I, as an alcoholic, I didn't know what my problem was. I thought it was money, so I pursued that. I thought it was family. I thought it was the town I was in, so I moved to another. But that wasn't the problem. When I got to another town, I still had the same problem, because my problem wasn't the town. And as we said, the first step is to see and understand the problem, and that's all the first step does. The first step says our problem is we're powerless. And that's easy enough. Powerless over alcohol in our lives have become unmanageable. And that's all wrapped up in as we go through and understand. This is just a problem statement. In order to understand that, we have to go into our book and examine the doctor's opinion that's in the big book there. We find the explanation of these steps. And in the big book, he states, it was a doctor's opinion. He stated, this is my opinion of the problem. When Bill went to see Dr. Silkworth, and Dr. Silkworth sat down to Bill and explained to him the exact nature of his problem. And this is passed on to us. I think this is the freedom from a problem, is to when you understand it. When you understand it, then you can realize what you can do to solve it. And he explained to Bill that he had a twofold problem. Part of it was in his body. Part of our problem is in the body. We had a physical allergy to alcohol. We are allergic to alcohol. And, when I first come to AA, I couldn't understand why I was allergic to alcohol. I said, I usually, when you're allergic to something, you break out in a rash, or you sneeze. But I never did break out in a rash, never did sneeze, and I just couldn't figure out how I could be allergic to alcohol. I was drinking 3 pints of it a day, But we learned that it isn't a visual or physical manifestation. He said the craving of alcohol is the manifestation of the allergy. And he said this never occurs in the average temperate drinker. And it was very simple. Every time I took a drink, I craved a second drink, and a third drink, and a fourth drink, and a fifth drink. And the more I drank, the more I craved. And I would take that drink, and I would drink too much, and I would go through the well-known spree, and I ended up sick and in a lot of trouble. And when I got through with that, I would do like every alcoholic. I would repeat our national anthem. I will never do that again. Yeah. Because, it's quite obvious, that alcohol was causing me a problem. In a way, alcohol was always did. I always did have a problem. But still yet, that if that would be the only thing, I could obviously say, well, I'll just leave that alone. It's obvious. It's like anything else. But, there was something else involved in this. And this was a mental factor involved. If it had just been physical, I would have left it alone the first time and said, boy, I ain't going to do that no more. Probably, Had about 45 years of sobriety by now. But what happened over here, I had the mind, over in the mind. My main problem was in my mind, not the fact that I couldn't drink alcohol. And that got worse and worse and worse. But over here, he said, I was restless and irritable and discontent. I had certain things within my makeup. Certain human factors that most people have, and loneliness, inadequate feelings, and these things would bother me. And once I began to learn, you know, once I began to take a few drinks of alcohol, I noticed that alcohol made me feel better. Alcohol changed the way I felt. Whether it was better, whether it got better or worse, it took me away from the point I was at. Alcohol took me away from there. And whatever it was, when I felt that way, I would realize that alcohol was my answer. My mind, once I learned to do this, my mind said, the doctor said I would remember the sense and ease and comfort would come at once by taking a few drinks of alcohol. When I had a feeling I didn't like, I would remember alcohol. And my mind would lead me over to take a few drinks of alcohol, which would take away my feelings. It would work. But it would also set off the craving in my body. And I would take the third drink and the fourth drink and the fifth drink and continue to drink and go through well-known spree, get in a lot of trouble down there on the bottom end. And I would emerge and repeat my national anthem. I will never do that again. And I would slowly build up with the mind, and this vicious cycle began to go over and over and over. And it got smaller and smaller and smaller. And it said the end result is this: insanity or death. Unless somewhere along the line we can see the exact nature of the problem. Because if we don't see the problem, we will carry it out to the bitter end. And most alcoholics today will never realize they're alcoholics. Most of them will go to insanity or death. But somewhere along the line, if you can see what's going on, see what the problem is, you can find a solution. And that's what the second step is, a solution. A solution to this problem is quite obvious. Like, you know, if you're powerless, the solution would be power. And we talked about the power in our program, the power of the fellowship, associating with other people like you, have the same problem you got, understanding and information that they can do. We can look at these people and we can get some hope because they have recovered. We can look at these people and we can come to believe. If we can come to believe, then we can come to the second part of this power, the vital spiritual experience. We can come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. And it's through going to the fellowship, seeing this in the flesh, hearing people, that we can pursue the ultimate solution, a power greater than ourselves. And we see, you know, that the solution, that we believe that this power can work within the mind, not the body. And therefore came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, could make us whole. So we have the first step, we see the problem, and the second step, we see the solution, and then we have these. This is the foundation. You know, we know exactly where we stand, and we know exactly where we want to go. This is our goal. Then the other steps, the main purpose then is to go from here to here. And we have a series of steps, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. These steps will enable us to find a power greater than ourselves which will solve our problem. So this is the journey that we're on. The main thing is this journey. But we can't really plan this until we have the foundation, these two things, where we are and where we want to go. Then we can figure out how to get there. Now the first step in this journey is a decision. That's the first step in any journey. You know, if you're going to California, your first step to get there is when you decide to go. You got to make a decision. Now, the decision precedes all action. And the decision is based on fact. Decision means to cut facts in two. Choose a course of action. And if you're an alcoholic, you have The first two steps have given you two facts. One fact is that you're powerless, and the other fact, there is a power. Okay? And it asks you to decide. This decision, cut in two, choose a course of action. If you're an alcoholic, and with honesty, you don't have but two courses of action. You know, when I was moving to California, that wasn't a fact. That was fiction. You know what I mean? When I did all those other things, it didn't improve the problem, because that isn't what the problem was. Where I was had nothing to do with it. But once I got down here, I had got to, we stand at a turning point. For the first time, I got a chance to turn this thing around. Because AA has given me two facts. If you're an alcoholic, our book says over and over, the only thing you can do is continue as you are, insanity or death, or life on a spiritual basis. You know, he said you may be suffering from an illness over here that only a spiritual experience will conquer. So once we stand at the turning point and we see these two facts, it's not a hard decision. You know, people say, well, I had a hard time making it. They didn't really, you know. That's just like I knew a guy some years ago come over and told me, he said, you know, I decided to come up here and get in the program. I said, you did? Yeah. He said, I went down to the judge and he told me he was going to get me 6 months in jail or I could go to meetings. And he said, I decided to go to meetings. Well, he really didn't have no decision, you know. He thought he had a decision, you know. And that's really where we are. You know, we don't have, but I think we take this road, we choose the power of backing away from this. So the first step is we make a decision. And once we make this decision, just like all decisions, you can't get to California on the decision. You know? The decision is no better than the actions that follow. So we make a decision to turn our will and our lives to the care of God. That's all we do in step 3. Now, how do we go about doing this? This is where we're coming in. You know, we have to go, if we want to turn our will and our lives to the care of God, we have to go to work to remove some things that block us off from God. And to do that, we have to identify what these things are. So we begin in step 4, the inventory process, to look within ourselves, to look at the stock in trade, the things that within us that block us off from God. And we went through it and we made a list of these things with the inventory process. We listed these things. Not only did we list them, we listed them and analyzed them. You know, we went through 3 areas of our grosser handicaps, which I mentioned in the big book. And we talked about, we put our resentments down. And resentments do block us from God, because there's no way that God can enter and direct a mind that's full of resentments. And we alcoholics just, he said, this is our number 1 offender. We enjoy resentments. We like to resent other people, but mainly we would like to resent ourselves. We love to feel sorry for ourselves, and we pass our days sitting around feeling sorry for ourselves. And so we put these things down and we list these resentments, and then we put down the cause of each resentment beside it. After we went from top to bottom listing the resentments, then we listed the causes. And thirdly, we put down which part of self was threatened. You know what I mean? You know, we can't have a resentment unless some part of self is threatened. Self is the root of all human problems. You know? So we got that down and we was able to read it across and analyze it. In the 4th column, we went through and put down, you know, what defective character was involved. And for the first time, you know, we got a true picture of our resentments. So we went through fear. We went through our sex life. And we put these things down now. We can list them and analyze them. And for the first time, you know, we're getting a little glimpse of ourselves. And I think, you know, as we go through the inventory, you know, we are, most of us is shocked, but most of us are going to find out we're humans. We're not God. We're just human beings with all of the frailties of all humans. Now that we see this, you know, I think step 4 This is why we have step 5. That's why 5 comes after 4. You know, it would be very damaging to see these things and to walk in the light of the understanding of ourselves and stay right at step 4. So that's why step 5 comes immediately behind, where we can bring these things out in the light of day. Because if they were to go back, we might be worse than we were. Our book says there are many reasons for taking step 5, and I love the subtlety and then maybe in a little humor, as Bill writes in the book. There are many reasons for taking step 5, but the best reason is you might get drunk if you don't. That's a pretty good reason. Now, it talks about, for the first time, all these other steps have been done really in the quietness of our mind, except for a little paper, the inventory process. These things have been done, we haven't went beyond ourselves. We looked at this information. We took step. Only on an individual basis can we take step 1. And only on an individual basis can we do step 2. And only we can make this decision. And only we can take this inner look at ourselves. So really, these things have been done within our minds and within ourselves. But now comes step 5, and maybe for the first time, we got to go beyond ourselves. No, you can't do step 5. Step 5 says to God and to ourselves and to another human being. And we said in our book, as we go through this, we talk about our book gives us a design of human life. And we say there are 3 dimensions. We have a spiritual life, and we have a mental life, and we have a physiological, sociological life. And our book says, number 1, we talk it over with God. That's the center of all human life. Deep down, every man, that's the core of life. And that, he said, we start in here, and alcoholism is an inside job. It really is. It's an inside job. A lot of professional people, a lot of times people that want to work with alcoholics, man, they tell the alcoholic, well, what you need to do is straighten up this circle out here. You know what I mean? And if you can straighten up your life and straighten up your family and do all this, then you'll be all right. You won't have to quit drinking. And that's what I tried that many, many years. Outside circle is made up of a lot of things. My job's out there. My wife's out there. My money's out there. You know what I mean? All my whole life is in that outside circle. My relationship with people. That's sociological. That's the biggest part of my life. I make money with people, my family's people. Everything's out there. And that circle was gone to hell. I worked on it for years. I'd get some money. I'd be out of money. I'd go get some money. I'd get the money back and the wife would be gone. I'd get the wife back and the car would be gone. I'd get the car back and they'd cut the lights off. Boy, hell, we can't never, we're just chasing rainbows, you know what I mean? But it says, build your house on a firm foundation. You know what I mean? Start inside. And so, we can see this design. It's a design for living. We can start now here at step 5. He says, we talk to God about it first. That comes first. And then we talked about ourselves. You know what I mean? Talk to ourselves about it. And then we share it with another human being. So we can see, for the first time, and this is very difficult for we alcoholics don't live in this way. See, an alcoholic, first thing he cuts is he's already sick way back before I even took a drink. I was on self in here, right? And when you're on self in here, it gets kind of painful in the head. And when it gets painful in the head, you have problems with people. See what I mean? So that's easy enough. You put booze in here, that takes care of the middle. And then run these people off. So we admit to God, to ourselves, another human being, the exact nature of our own. And I think, we have to talk about some words here and get maybe some broader concept of words. You know, we always hone in on that word wrongs. Well, you tell an alcoholic about it, you know, immediately we get all out of shape when we say the exact nature of our wrongs. Well, wrongs, if we look up the word wrongs or look at the broadest interpretation of really what the word really means, we usually think about things we did wrong, wrong actions. But also there is some other wrongs. You know, wrong thinking, wrong judgment, right? Wrong believing, and then wrong actions. Remember in step 3, we made a decision to turn over our thinking and our actions. We have wrong actions. But the exact nature of our wrongs is wrong thinking and wrong believing. These are the things that brings on the wrong actions. You know, we have resentments, which is wrong judgment. And if we went through and this is why it's so important to step 4, if we have went through our inventory and listed and analyzed these things, we have seen the value of really resentments. We have seen how we have judged people wrongly. We see how we have judged people and put the blame on them with our resentments to excuse our involvement in that thing. But now that we see the truth, you know, the truth sets us free. And we see got wrong believing. We alcoholics, we're full of fear. We have listed and analyzed those wrong believings. You know, we alcoholics we don't know what's going to happen, but we know it's going to be bad. Yeah. If all the things ever happened to me that I believe was going to happen to me, a insurance company never would carry me. Boy, I mean, I always believed some bad thing was going to happen to me. None of them never happened, but I didn't realize, I couldn't tell myself that. Feel me? Because I couldn't see the truth. I could only see the lie. I really believed that all these things were going to happen. So fear is wrong believing. And then we also listed in our resentments, you know, the harms done to others. So these are the things we're going to talk about. Not what we not the things we did wrong, but the exact nature of our wrongs. And if we have done the inventory as the big book has laid out in detail, then we have the information to share with another human being. You know, we alcoholics have cut ourselves off from people, and you know, and I think we live in a very lonely way. And just coming back to in 12 and 12, Bill says getting in with Alcoholics Anonymous, getting with other people, breaks down some of this. You know, but it still, you know, it doesn't give us the intimacy, or does it give us the completeness or being back until we're really able to admit these things and to share with another human being and become a part of life. You know, it's why we feel isolated. And nothing breaks down this isolation any better than step 5, when we reveal something of our inner lives and open ourselves up with other people for the first time. And we won't never know. That's one thing about these steps. You will never know the results of them until you do them. They don't give you the results before. The results comes after the step. So we begin, and then we talk to God about the exact nature of our wrong. And if we have done the inventory thoroughly, we have this information. And we have the exact nature of our wrongs. You know, they say confession is good, and it's nothing new about confession. But this in itself is not really a confession. It's more or less a thorough discussion. And I think you know that as we get these things down on our list, we're going to say that this was a resentment, this was a cause, this part of self was involved. And we can only put these things down as we see them. You know, and we alcoholics, you know, our book talks so beautifully about this. In order to be an alcoholic, you have to be a con artist. You really do. It's come natural with the disease. You know, it goes with the disease. And the person you really have to con is yourself. See, there is no way that we could live with ourselves unless we conned ourselves. We have to lie to ourselves. And it becomes natural. You know what I mean? Alcoholic does that. He just lies natural to himself. See, we get up in the morning, we go to work, and we're damn near dead when we get out of bed. You know how we feel? Ain't been in there that long. And we're sick, and we're in bad shape, and we drag ourselves out of bed, and we stick that toothbrush in our mouth, and that's bad news, you know. And maybe we could eat some breakfast, a piece of toast, and throw some coffee down. And we jump in the car somewhere, we get to work. And when we get there, we're sicker than most people out here in the hospital. You know, most people are sick as we are in the recovery room out there. And we're damn near dead. And the boss says, "How you doing this morning?" "Fine, fine, fine." Boy, it's a funny thing. You know, I go down in detox ward down at the Benton unit all the time. You walk in there, and everybody in there inquires about your health. They say, "How you doing, Joe?" I say, "I'm fine. How you doing?" "You the one." "I'm fine." Guy just saved his life last night, and he wanted to know how I'm doing. Okay, so how can we really, even though it says, and we have taken, no, we put down the truth as we saw it. The truth as we saw it. But that's very, very important. But a lot of times, you know, I really say to myself, I'm truthful. But even yet today, I'm truthful as I see it. As I see it. But as I see the truth, is that really the truth? I only can see the truth through my eyes. And none of us can be 100% honest with ourselves. And we never have been all our lives. So we did the best we could with this inventory. And this is why step 5 is so important. Step 5 is to go out and to improve on that information. We got the problem down as we see it. Now we take to another person, to God and to another person, and get more to the exact nature of the problem, of the wrong. You know, he's going to look at these things. He'll look at some of these resentments. And he'll look at the cause. And he said, which part of self was threatened? You know, chances are, sometimes he's going to say, well, I believe this was different. You know, probably going to say, well, this was caused by selfishness. He said, no, this was just damn dishonesty that caused this. You know what I mean? He's going to tell you, he's going to move some of those things. He's going to improve on the inventory. Step 5 is a process of improving on the information in the inventory. You know, because we cannot see. Even yet today, I can't see the truth of my life. I think none of us would ever be noticed a total truth. This is why we have to keep these doors open with other people. So, you know, we begin this process, and he says, you know, many people have failed because they did this, but they didn't they took stock. They thought they had lost the egotism and fear, and they only thought they had humbled themselves. This is a very humbling step. But they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. You know, we alcoholics, he said, we do lead a double life. You know, he talks about how we play our lives on the stage, and we want a character that we know we don't really deserve. And sometimes we play those games, and, you know, I think most of us get playing those games for other people, and we play that role over and over and over for other people, and finally somewhere along the line we lose all identity of what we really are. And this is why it's all about learning who we are. But we've been playing, get one role for this guy, one role for this guy, one role for her, one role for her, and we don't know what our role really was. You know, you see some of them people, you say, well, what did I play for her the last time I saw her? You know, And we lose all identity. So we begin here in this process of doing this, and he tells us how to do this. You know, our book is very simple. Number one, we talk to God about it, and I think this is in the start and the middle. God, this is easy enough to know. This is great. He already knows it anyway. And I think he just wanted to hear us say it out loud so he knows that we'll know it. That's all it is. You know what I mean? He already knows. There's no new information, but he, hearing us say it, knows that for the first time we see the light, that we begin to see these things. And this maybe, you know, is our first communication, and it's very difficult. Maybe having just made contact with God. Maybe it's our first time and sit down and I think a lot of times, you know, most time we have trouble with step 5. People are constantly staring at the last part, another human being. And I think if we would work it, the step is talk to God about it first. Talk to God about it. Whatever our conception or understanding at this point is very simple. But just talk to God as we understand Him about what we have saw in our inventory. So first time, you know, I think that we can see that we're not bad people. We're just sick people trying to get well. We're not bad people trying to get good. Biggest thing wrong with just like really most people. They're all good people. They just got some things out of the wrong place. And our book talks about rearrangements and some adjustments. You know, we got some of the things that belong over here, and some over here. Everything's out of whack. You know what I mean? And we're going to get rid of anything. We're going to put some things back in order. And so we begin, and we talk to God about it. And then next we talk to ourselves about it. And boy, it's a great, you know, I think that I heard a guy say one of the greatest meetings that anybody ever has in his life, and I think that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is all about, enables us to do. And some people never have it. One of the greatest meetings you're going to ever attend is that one big meeting you're going to have with yourself. Boy, that's, you know, I never want to meet myself. I used to walk in the bathroom somewhere and I'd try to shave, turning away from the mirror. And every once in a while, you know, regardless to what we do, we're naturally human beings, and our minds turn on ourselves. Our minds turn inward into our life occasionally, and all the alcohol and all the confusion. Every once in a while, we alcoholics have a little glimpse of ourselves, and it's scary. You know, remember sometime at a bar, or sometime getting out of bed, or many, many times during my life with alcohol, my mind would reflect back on me. And I would start looking at me. And boy, I'd say, boy, let's get a drink and get our minds off of that. Don't think about that. You know, man, that's natural. We run from ourselves, hide from ourselves. And for the first time in our life, after admitting to God, we'll be able to face ourselves. After. Through the grace of God. And I think this is great. I mean, boy, this meeting began for me many years ago. And I have some good meetings with me. Boy, I have many hours in the last 20-some years. I have had many, many hours with me. And it's the most enjoyable thing in the world is to be with yourself. It's great. And we argue sometimes. We have some great conversations. I wonder if I drive down the street and I see people looking at me, I don't know, we just have some good conversation. But it's great to have a meeting with yourself. And then after we accomplish this, then it talks about another person, you know, for the first time. This is. But if we have overcome these first two hurdles, we're prepared for this. And we can see how the intensity builds and why it's so difficult just to avoid these things and try to do. We can't work the step that way. But once we have done these things, then we can come to another human being. And I think for the first time in our lives, and our book is very complete. It tells us how to do all this. tells us exactly how to do this step. You know, it says we got the inventory. It tells us even how to select the person to take the inventory away. It's no problem today because there are many, many people in the fellowship around Alcoholics Anonymous who have been through the same things you've been through. If you're new here tonight, you know, you're not going to tell them anything that's going to excite them. And the only thing you're going to talk about the exact nature of your problem. He's not interested in what you did wrong. You know? You could talk forever about what you did wrong. And it, you know, it isn't of any great value. And I think with too much time, we concentrate on what I did wrong. What did I did wrong? I want to tell you and confess. Well, that is, you know, that has some cleansing effect. But if you don't talk about and learn what sort of thinking caused you to do that, you're going to be down there with a new batch of them next week. You have to get down to the exact cause of the wrong. And these are the things we saw in the inventory. This is why the inventory has to be correct, or else you can't do nothing in step 5 but talk about what you did wrong. You get a cleansing effect, but we got to see the exact nature. Now, once we see this, our book tells us how to select someone, and our book was complete, and I love the big book. And it's so easy to take our steps with the book. On page 74 of the book, it tells us how to do everything, how to select someone to take this with. Of course, it is not a problem because we have plenty of sponsors. We have plenty of people, knowledgeable people around now here at this time in 1987. But remember, in 1939, there wasn't anybody around. Someone in New York wrote the book and sent it here to Little Rock. And the guy here in Little Rock, he didn't say, go talk to your sponsor, because there wasn't any sponsors here. And it had to be a complete book. It had to inform the guy how to handle everything. So it told him how to find someone to take step 5. And the book is still in its original form, hadn't been changed. And I love this section of the book. Rightly or naturally, we think before we choose a person to whom we think take this intimate and confidential step. Now it says, those of us belonging to a religious denomination which requires confession must, of course, want to go to a proper point of authority. You know, if you belong to that religion, then you take that route. He said, though we have no religious connection, we may still do well to talk to someone in ordained religion, established religion. And we often find such people quick to see and understand our problems. That's true. And, of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand the alcoholic. Okay, he's given us certain suggestions. Now, he says if we cannot do this, we may search out an acquaintance or a close-mouthed friend. Boy, that close-mouthed, understanding friend. Now, you know, in 1939, this is what you had to do. Probably go to work and find some guy you work with and say, hey, man, I want to take step 5 with you. Over on page 75, he begins to tell us, he said, when we have decided who is to hear our story, you know, we have decided this, and we got a sponsor. It's very simple, it's very easy what we do. He says, we have a written inventory. We have these sheets all filled out. We have the information. And this is as we see it. And we go to this person, and he goes over these things in great detail. He goes over the first resentment. You know, and he's not involved in this resentment. Remember, he wasn't there. You know, he can see the truth about it. He can see the exact nature of it. And as he goes through these inventories and reads each one across, and he looks at the resentment, and looks at the cause, he looks which part of self is involved, and he looks at the character defect involved. He's going to check those out and see if he agrees with it as you agree with them. And if there's something there that he sees different, he's going to talk these things over with you and improve on your inventory. And as he goes through these things in a very detailed way, discussing with you, the chances are he's going to share also a little bit of himself and how he had problems and how he had similar things in his life. And as you go through these things, you'll find the loneliness begin to vanish in your life. You'll find out you're not unique. You'll find out, that you're a part of things. And you also, you know, you will feel renewed in the fact that you can handle these things. You will feel renewed in the fact that you will be able to let go of them because you have seen the damage and effect of them when you get to step 6. So he says we explain upon what we have to do and why we have to do it. He said most people approach this way would be glad to help. They would be honored by our confidence. We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. Now we talk about every twist of character. Now we talk about our selfishness, our dishonesty, our self-seeking, our inconsideration, and how these things and the things they caused in our lives. You know, the pain and the wrongs they caused in other people's lives. We talk about these things. You know, our resentments go all the way back through our lives. You know, I didn't have my resentments didn't come from yesterday. Some of them come from 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago, all the way back to the beginning. Like the guy said, when that doctor picked me up and spanked me, I've resented him ever since then. You know, I resented people that was dead. I mean, I just resented, you know, all through my life. So it was all the way back through my life, these resentments. And we went through these things, we discussed these things. He says, once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. You know, step 5 is a very rewarding step. If we look at the steps up to this point, if we look at step 1, of course you don't get anything for step 1. That's just seeing the problem. There's no improvement in saying, well, that's the problem. There's no improvement in determining the solution. You know, you don't feel any better when you get the prescription. All the improvement begins with the action steps. And step 3 is just a decision. They're not allowed. It's a decision to take some action. But step 3 says it's just a beginning. Sometimes the effect is felt at once, but most time it's just a beginning. So you don't get a lot out of step 3. And step 4 is not real action. It's sitting down and identify the things to act on. But step 5 really is the first step of action. For the first time, we have gone beyond our own minds. We had to go outside of ourselves. And of all the steps that we have taken, there is more rewards from step 5 than all the 4 steps before it. We get more out of step 5. It was the first step of some real results. And it says, you know, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Now we have met ourselves. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs. You know, at step 2, we came to believe, and that's all we've been traveling on, up to step 5. But now we begin to have a spiritual experience. Step 5 is the beginning of the spiritual experience. Not step 3, where we just made a decision. But once we have put up some action, the first step of real action, this is the beginning of the spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem had disappeared would often come strongly. Sometimes after step 5, you know, for the first time, you know, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We feel we're on a broad highway walking hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. For the first time, you know, we get some confidence, you know, we know that things are beginning to happen after step 5. You know, most people take step 3 and wait for this to happen. The first step, and that's waiting for all these things. You know, you can study the program and you study the steps, and they will tell you where you are and when you're going to get it. After each step, it will give you the results. Now, after you take these steps, these 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they're pretty hard steps. And you wore out by now. And I love the big book is the first time you have a little rest is after step 5. You need to pause a little bit because you're pretty wore out if you took these first 5 steps. He said, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. And I love that. He did say an hour. He didn't say 3 weeks, did he? Careful reviewing. Sit down, carefully reviewing what we have done. You know, just look at these steps. We thank God from the bottom of our heart we know him better. You know, at step 2, we just believed. But already we know God better than we did when we started. You know, we're not spiritual giants. Never will be, but we know him better. Okay, taking the book down from the shelf, we turn to the pages which contains the 12 steps. We go to the page that contains these 12 steps we're trying to work. Carefully reviewing the first 5 proposals. We're going to look at the first 5 steps. We ask if we omitted anything. For we are building an arch to which we shall walk a free man at last. Is our work solid so far, the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement, putting the foundation? Have we tried to make more without sand? You know, we go back and look at those first 5 steps. And you know, as he begins to draw, and as we said, the book is drawing pictures in our minds. You know, he says, remember, as we begin, he said, this new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. And he's sort of building this arch. You know, he's drawing pictures in our minds. And he's talking about this arch. We're going to go through this gate to freedom. And, you know, in those, as we talked about how they built these arches, we said that step 3 was the keystone. You know, he said willingness was the foundation. He says step 2 was the cornerstone. Step 1 is the foundation. So we got 1, 2, and 3 in here. And this stone here is what's the keystone, the new and triumphant arch to which we pass to freedom. So we had those stones in there, and now we have put in step 4 and maybe probably step 5. So we got these in place. We're building an arch through which we're going to go through the freedom. And he says, we look at this thing, and I think, you know, he says that he associates this arch, paralleling the arch, with a spiritual experience. And we can see it developing in our lives. And this is the gate through it. The spiritual experience is the gateway to freedom. And he parallels it with this design. And as we begin to put these stones, he says we stop at step 5 and review and see if these things are properly in place. See if we have done these thoroughly. And he said if we can answer to our satisfaction, then we can go into step 6. But this is the foundation of our recovery. And we'll just begin. We're on our road. And I think, you know, as we begin to step 4 and 5 is a real pinnacle. Because the real success of the rest of the program lies in step 4 and step 5. It's the information that we have gathered in step 4 and the improvement on this information that allows us to be willing now in step 6, if we have seen how damaging these things and destructive these things to our lives and the problems they have caused, then surely step 6, which we become willing to have them removed, this was very simple and very easy. You know, willing to let go of them in step 6. And then in 7, we're going to ask God to remove them. This is a very simple process. If we have done the job thoroughly in step 4 and step 5. And if we haven't done the job thoroughly in step 4 and step 5, then we need to do that, because then steps 6, 7, 8, and 9, and the rest of the steps become quite simple based on the efforts we put in step 3, 4, and 5. And if those are complete, then we can look at step 6. And next week we'll go in to step 6.